This footage was shot all on iPhone. But it doesn't really look like it, right? All of this footage has one thing in common, and that one thing, I would argue, makes it look more professional and, dare I say, cinematic. Things like color grading and lighting, yes, can always help your image, but there's one thing that can make your videos really go from amateur to pro. And that's what's even crazier about this feature is it's been in the iPhone, well, the iPhone Pro, for now almost a year. So if you're thinking about upgrading to the new iPhone 16 Pro, or you've just had a 15 Pro this entire year, now is the time to give this feature a try. I didn't actually say what that feature was, did I? Apple Log. That Apple shoot in Apple Log. I know a lot of people made videos about this a year ago, but it is so underrated, and I know it's intimidating, so I want to get you started today. And I want to show you all of the cool footage that I've shot this year. And shout out to Lexar for sponsoring this video. Their new ultra slim SSD that is lighter than a pair of AirPods boasts a speed of up to 2,000 megabytes per second read and 1,800 megabytes per second write, which is honestly just crazy. I feel like we're living in the future. We're getting so close to the internal read and write speeds of our internal computer SSDs. So it holds up to 4 terabytes, which is helpful if you choose to shoot an Apple Log and the default camera app, because 1 minute of 4K ProRes Apple Log footage can take up to 4 gigs of space. So if you want to check it out, I'll make sure to put a link down in the description below, a little bit more on them later. And so yeah, let's talk Apple Log. Okay, so the iPhone 15 Pro and Apple Log has officially replaced the video point and shoot for me. Yes, I used to be the queen of the RX 100 and I don't use it anymore. I don't use the ZV-1. I don't use these little vlogging cameras anymore. I used to love them so much. I either video now on my iPhone and Apple Log for those, you know, big family moments with a little baby, maybe she's laughing or doing something cute, or I'll just use, you know, a big boy camera like the Sony a7S III. So I don't live in this in between anymore. Like, Apple Log is that good. Apple Log bypasses all of that iPhone processing that makes your iPhone footage look like, you know, well, an iPhone. So Apple's processing is amazing for just filming, I don't know, things in general, social content, everyday life stuff. It's great for hitting different exposures all in one shot, right? So if you have like a dark subject in front of a super bright sunset, boom, the default video in your camera app is gonna have you covered. But something really special happens when you bypass that processing magic. The Apple Log footage all of a sudden effortlessly mixes in with your other camera footage. So when it comes to documenting memories of, you know, our little baby girl that I know she'll just be watching decades from now, right? I want that footage to look beautiful and timeless. And the fact that I can now get that, you know, out of a device that is in my pocket at all times is actually pretty cool. Wow, I've really hyped this up, okay. Let's now get into the deets. What is it? Why would you want to shoot and log in the first place? So the TLDR is really to just maximize dynamic range. So dynamic range is the ratio in between the darkest part of your image and the brightest. And when I was looking up examples of this, Petapixel actually has a really great example on their website. You can see in this image where the sun is in the background. You don't have any detail of the sun or the highlights up above. It's just too bright, right? But they wanted to expose for the person's face, so they had to sacrifice the highlights of the really, really bright sun and background. If you had unlimited dynamic range, you would perfectly see the sky and the sun and the person's face, kind of like how you just see in real life with your eyeballs, right? But unfortunately, our cameras haven't caught up with these guys yet. Higher dynamic range equals more detail in the shadows and the highlights that would typically either be completely dark or blown out. Now, this is not to be confused with bit depth, okay? So bit depth is the amount of colors your camera can actually capture. So this is why color grading 10-bit log footage compared to 8-bit log footage is so much better, because you just have more color data to work with. Now that's not something you have to worry about when shooting with Apple Log. That's more of an example of shooting like with a Sony a7 III versus the a7 IV, right? 8-bit versus 10-bit that's able to capture a much wider range of colors. Therefore, you can really push the values more around in post, especially when shooting in log. I had some people arguing about the nuances of what I just said over on Twitter if you really want to get into it, but hopefully that helps you get the basics. So when is the time to shoot in log? So when it comes to iPhone, I'm not shooting Instagram stories in Apple Log, okay? That's just way too much trouble. Anything that you have to post immediately, I highly recommend to not add a step that makes it more difficult. Shooting in log compresses all of this extra dynamic range data into that file, which results in this very flat, bland looking image. No matter what, you will have to do some level of post-processing after you shoot it to make it look normal. You're not gonna post this looking footage anywhere. Even when shooting with my Sony a7S III or even this FX6 for this YouTube channel, I actually use the standard color profile and S-Cinetone a lot. It's just super easy. I don't have to worry about exposing it correctly. That is something you have to worry about when shooting in log, and it can just be tricky sometimes. So even though standard and S-Cinetone aren't really meant to be color graded, that's what some of the color snobs will tell you, you know, well, actually you shouldn't color grade S-Cinetone because it's meant to be broadcast ready and blah. Yes, true. But I still have a blast doing like a quick color grade on those clips, you know, with some film convert to add some of that peachy seasoning. You know, I enjoy that. So I do color grade just normal standard footage all of the time, and I think it looks great. However, whenever I shoot outside, I'll almost always shoot in log. So Sony's log is called S-Log, so shooting in S-Log. That increased dynamic range is just a game changer, right? And I also shoot in S-Log for branded projects where, you know, having that elevated, clean, commercial, cinematic look is really nice to have for that. Okay, let's get you shooting Apple Log. The easiest way to just start shooting with Apple Log is go to your camera, go to video, and then you'll see up here ProRes Log. And all you're gonna do is just press record. It's gonna do everything for you. Are you doing it? Literally pull out your phone right now. Asterisk if you have the iPhone 15 Pro or Pro Max or the new iPhone 16 models. Now, another great way to shoot Apple Log is with the Blackmagic Cam App. This is a free app, and see, we got that flat image. Ooh, it's a little too bright. The settings are manual in my app, but I'm gonna put them back into auto real quick. Okay, so right when you open this app, you can just tap on the screen, and just like in your default iPhone app, it's going to automatically focus and expose for you. Boom, you're already shooting Apple Log. How exciting is this? And all you have to do is just go to the media, you see your clip, you export it, and you're still gonna get a really amazing image. One huge benefit of shooting in the Blackmagic Cam app is you can go to settings, and instead of the Kodak being ProRes, you can actually select HEVC H.265, and it's going to be a much smaller file size. Now, if you're gonna color grade the crap out of the footage that you capture, and it's going in the fanciest video ever, yes, I would still record in ProRes, but H.265, I promise you, you probably won't tell the difference, and it's gonna save you space on your phone, or if you're shooting with an external SSD. Okay, so at this point, you should have shot at least one Apple Log clip that we're gonna bring into your laptop, and we're gonna show you how to convert it to make it look beautiful. So I wanted to get the basics out of the way before I kind of explain more how to manually expose with the Blackmagic Camera app. A big part of this workflow is bigger file sizes, and this is where something like the Lexar SL500 portable SSD comes in handy. I mean, this thing is just so light and durable. It still works, everyone. Look at that. If that is not a testament to to the durability of this thing, I don't know what is. I have been a huge fan of Lexar for a long time. I've used their V90 SD cards, their CF Express cards for my A7S III, for my FX6, and what I will say is they are just reliable. They don't skip a beat, and I have never had a problem with them. And this is what you want from an SSD as well. Have I said that this is light? It's just extremely light. You can get 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte, or 4 terabytes. This is 4 terabytes, and it's actually crazy how affordable this SSD super fast storage has gotten. We're talking about 2,000 megabytes per second read speeds. That is just huge. It is rated IP66 to protect against both water and dust, and built to withstand up to 3-meter drops, which I've already demonstrated. It's compatible with PC, Mac gaming consoles, cameras, Android, iPhone 15, and that's why this Lexar SL500 is such a great fit for this video, because you can rig it up with a Magsafe mount, and it is really the perfect accessory to shooting Apple Log with your iPhone. Those ProRes files can get so big. Like I said earlier, a 1-minute 4K file can be 4 gigs. So whether you're recording Apple Log ProRes directly to the SSD from your iPhone, or you're just loading it up with your 4K video projects and editing off of this, it really does it all. When capturing content from your iPhone 15 or later onto your Lexar SSD, just make sure that the SSD is formatted before plugging in, and you'll see it pop up directly in the stock iPhone camera app, or you can go here in the Blackmagic Cam settings and find it. So if you want to check out the Lexar SL500 SSD, make sure to check out my link in the description below.
What do you expect this image to look like?
I'm assuming, I don't know, you're really good at making iPhone not look iPhone. So I feel like I'm gonna be surprised that there's actually some depth in the shot.
Yeah, I heard you got had recently.
Oh, yes, you got me. I literally thought something that was shot on iPhone was shot on the Sony. But I will say, you baited us. You were like excited to be back on Sony. It was IG story, it was small, and I was like, oh, looks great. And I just sent a little clapping thing. And then he pranked me, and the next story was JK, it was iPhone, and I was surprised. So this is with the LUT?
Yeah.
Oh, that looks fantastic. Guys, we have a fun guest here. Jonathan, I haven't seen you in so long. Life has been lifing. So it's really good to see you and, you know, good spirits. And we're out here just making the YouTube videos. How are you feeling?
Better than I was, yeah.
Good,
yeah.
good. We've been talking about Apple Log. And we started chatting on social about this because I saw you shooting with Apple Log. And it's just something that both of us have been doing, and something that I haven't covered in this video is how to go into the Blackmagic app and really customize your exposure. When you're in auto, you can start to see the ISO bounce up and down and the shutter up and down. And so if you're trying to achieve, you know, realistic motion blur, and you know, there could maybe be some just up and downs with exposure, it is important to kind of set the shutter to 1/48 or 180 degrees, and then you can go in and set the ISO to one specific value. Use some of these tools that are at your disposal to make sure something isn't underexposed or overexposed. One way to do that is with zebras. So when I'm on my Sony and I'm just shooting standard, I'm not shooting log, I'll usually have zebras turned on to 100. What that means is if you have the zebras on, you know, say a window, that means it is overexposed. You're not going to be able to see what is outside that window. For the shot, that's probably fine. However, if I had zebras on my face, that is not good. That means my face is overexposed, and I'm not going to be able to fix that in post. And so that is a really nice way to use zebras. Now, when shooting in log, that's a bit different, right? Because when you're shooting in log, typically you want to overexpose. That's because it's much easier to bring the image down as it is doing the opposite, because if you have to brighten up your log image, you're actually going to get a lot of noise in the shadows. This is why I didn't lead with this, but exposing Apple Log on the iPhone is a little bit more complicated than other cameras, because the clipping value that you would set your zebras to changes depending on the ISO that you choose. So what I'm about to say isn't perfect, so don't roast me in the comments, but you can set the zebras to 95%, and that should be good. So if you have zebras on your face set at 95%, that's not good. Lower the exposure. Did that make sense?
I hate it so much. Log is important on iPhone, not for log, but for what it unlocks, I think. And like I said, I'll preview the LUT, and if it looks good, I'll just bake it in or print it. And I think false color is probably my favorite way to expose, especially for skin tones. That was the thing that was almost unlocked a new level for me, I think. Blackmagic has their version, Airy has their version, I think Red even has their own version. So false color is cool because it will essentially measure light across every aspect, so you can tell what's 0, what's 100. If it's red and it's clipping, you can tell that's like the zebra. I think what is...
So red is bad.
It depends on, again, the type of false color. I think the helpful part is just finding that sweet spot for skin tones. It's kind of a dummy-proof science way to nail skin tones.
In the Blackmagic Cam app with false color, they actually have what the different values are.
So that's usually like 18% gray. Like skin tones would probably be starting like at the pink, and then you can lean into gray, but then when you get into like yellow, red, that's when you get into trouble. Just by false color, like half of your face right now is pink, which...
What's the ISO set at?
55. And with this much light, like this is a lot of light, you would probably be around 55. Like, yeah, 200 is gonna be crazy. I'm gonna record so we can go through different ones. I can't tell what real life is, but I know 160 is too high, 125 is too high, 100 is too high. 64 looks great, 80's pushing it, so 64 is a good split.
So the shutter's set 1/48. I leave that alone, just because I shoot in 24 frames per second, so that's what you wanna hit. And then, are you still at ISO?
Yeah, 64 or 55 is probably a sweet spot. I'll go 64. I will turn, yeah, so most of your face right now is in that magenta pink. And then there's the gray right below that, which is cool because you have a nice contrast ratio. Interestingly enough though, the brighter light is coming from the knot key.
Oh, the hair.
So it's different, yeah. So it's kind of a reverse of what you would normally do. I mean, that's a healthy image. And then, yeah, so false color told me ISO 64 looked good, but then also trust your gut and know that, hey, that looks a little underexposed. So
from an iPhone, man.
It looks like a Sony, right?
Yeah, and this is something I want to emphasize, something that Jonathan just said, trust your gut. We've been shooting video for a very long time, so I think some of that confidence does come over time, because when you're shooting with log, if you underexpose something, that actually is gonna cause some trouble in post, right? But once you get your reps in, you kind of play around with these different tools, false colors, zebras, the histogram. Then if you turn all those things off and you just look at your image, you're gonna be able to say, okay, maybe I need to tweak it this way or that way. When I started this video, I started it with like, oh, just make sure it looks good on your phone, right? But when you're starting out, I think people don't have that, right? They don't have like that gut feeling, or they haven't looked at hundreds of different interview style, shots to be able to like know what that looks like.
Sure.
So we've briefly touched zebras, false color, but you also mentioned the histogram. This is something that is on the bottom left-hand corner of the Blackmagic Cam app. And listen guys, I'm a little embarrassed to say that before this video, I actually really didn't know much about the histogram. I understand what a waveform tells you, but the histogram, I just really never knew, and it's actually pretty simple. When you're looking at it from left to right, it's basically telling you information about your image that says, hey, starting from the left, this is how much of your image is like in the shadows, in the mids, and then also in the highlights. So if all of your waveforms are all the way to the left, that means your image is actually really dark. You probably need to move it a little bit more to the right. The same is true when it's all the way on the right, and if you start to see the peak happening at the very right, that means that, hey, you have some highlights that are clipping. That's when you kind of want to move it back to the left. So again, just like the other tools, it's not something that's going to give you an entire picture, but it's just a tool that gives you a little bit more information about your image. So typically, you kind of want the histogram to be around the middle, right? So you have a healthy amount of the shadows, the mids, and the highlights, but when shooting in log, right, it's okay for it to be a little bit more over to the right. Is that how people should think about it?
Kind of. I just think if you're starting out, just kind of forget log. And
But that's what we're talking about in this video,
no,
Jonathan.
I know. I'm not knocking log. It gives you more data, more options, more flexibility, more dynamic range. Don't be afraid to use an assist tool then.
Yes.
Like monitor in 709.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to, I'm not discrediting log. I think you're a crazy person if you shoot flat log.
So when you say monitor LUT though, is that different than just like loading up a LUT in your camera?
So with like Small HD or Blackmagic, it's a preview. And that's where you have two options. You can preview it, and then you still have log. When you pull it into your computer, then you could throw that LUT on there. You can throw a different one. You could mess with it. But it's just giving you what it looks like in 709. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And then that's, like I said, if you are shooting and monitoring and just pure log, like RIP.
But if you're using the specific tools, the exposure tools, your image should turn out exactly the way you need it, right?
And it did.
Yeah.
But I will always encourage to at least preview in 709.
Right. When it comes to Apple Log and shooting with a Blackmagic Cam, once you start going through the settings and you realize, okay, I want it to stay at 1/48 shutter, that needs to stay, right, for the motion blur. And then also, oh, I can't adjust the aperture because it's iPhone, it's a set aperture. Interesting, the only values that you have left are white balance and ISO. And I would always argue to just set the white balance as well, unless you're going from inside to outside, it doesn't matter, just leave it on auto white balance. But typically when I'm shooting inside, I will set the white balance value. So all you're left with is ISO.
Don't do auto white balance.
Yeah. But if it's just like, if you're out and about and,
I think, but it's also helpful, like much like you would learn, what's really helpful is if you start to learn color temperatures. So like think of a candle that's like closer to 2000, 10,000 is really blue. Outside in the bright sunlight, that's typically 5600. If it's overcast, it's 6500. Most times, like unless you're in a hospital, if you're inside, general house lights are gonna be like 3,000 to 4,000. And then once you kind of learn how to eye that, that's really helpful.
Yeah. And I always start at daylight, which is 5600, and then I'll adjust from there. So if it's looking not accurate to what my eyeballs see, then I'll adjust it. But when I have all 5600 lights in a studio,
then it's 56.
Then it's 56.
A cool thing you can do though is, like let's say outside in the living room or whatever, you can set the camera to 3200, set the light to 3200. You're going to look like you look here, but then your background is going to appear cool and blue. So it's a cool way to play with the shot.
Yeah, so you're left with white balance and also ISO. Now this is where it gets a little bit complicated. YouTube has made this very complicated because what these people are saying, the homie Gerald Undone, shout out, everyone loves him. And he did this rigorous test of, hey, maximum dynamic range with Apple Log is at 1250 ISO, so 1250 ISO. So that has everyone trying to shoot Apple Log at 1250 ISO. I will just say the biggest hump of improvement you're gonna get is just going from default camera to Apple Log, period, okay? You're not gonna get this crazy improvement from 200 ISO to 1250 to the point where you have to jump through all these hoops just to set your iPhone at 1250. Because if you're shooting outside, that's going to be impossible.
Yeah.
You can add an ND filter. I have an ND filter for my iPhone, but even then, I still find myself setting the ISO at lower values, and guys, that's okay. It still looks great.
I don't think I ever go over 640.
There you go. And again, you've seen in this video, the quick shot that he just shot with me, all that matters is the end result. And what you're producing looks amazing.
Thanks.
And that's what matters.
Yeah, no, I think, again, I love Gerald. I love the attention to detail, and I love the nerd tech side. I think just sometimes you get lost in the weeds. I think that's what also gets people in trouble with worrying about like, oh, do I need to buy this next camera because, oh, there's an extra stop or two. Like, but again, if you work on composition, lighting, and that's really all that matters, I think. And
yeah, and really the point that I'm trying to make in this video is just that leap that you do to shooting in log actually is huge. Because in the beginning, like when you just pick up the camera and you just set to the standard profile, it's gonna look amazing. But I think where the big disconnect is they see what other people's videos look like and they're just like, what is that little missing element? Because even if you light something amazingly, if you compose, something, you're still gonna be missing a little bit of that look.
Sure.
And I think that does attribute to log. And that's why I wanna encourage people to just like take that step.
Yeah, no,
I think it does make a huge difference, the dynamic range.
Everyone can make fun of me because I will openly be an Apple person. and that's okay, but I'll not be an idiot and say that prior to the 15 Pro, it always looked like a phone.
Exactly.
I think this is the first time where it looks like a camera, and I think, again, it's not that I'm never discrediting log. Log is important. Log is just a flat image, and that gives you more power. And I shoot log, I shoot that, but I'm not afraid to bake it in again. And I will say, to throw you a curveball, there's an app called Kino that is probably in between Blackmagic and the stock. It's nice if you just want to not think about exposure. They do a real good job of auto exposure. It's not as complex as Blackmagic, and I still think there are things that they need to update to make it something that I would trust every day. But again, I think it's the important thing I would just implore people to remember is there are different tools for different things, right? Because sometimes just going out in the stock camera app with what Apple does in their processing to expose for the sun and outside and skies, like sometimes it's okay to do that.
Yeah. Jonathan, this was so nice not only to see you, but to also just like dork out with you, because I think when I'm making videos all by my lonesome and I'm like going down the rabbit holes at night, I forget that other people like doing this stuff. So it's so good to see you. And are you making stuff again? You don't have to.
That's the
no
plan.
pressure.
No. It's been a wild 2 years, I think, just with health in the body, and I feel like we independently went through life in crazier ways than we would have ever thought or imagined. But no, I've been working really hard to get back, and I think luckily at this point, by the time this video goes out, I should be in a more normal swing of things.
Amazing.
So there will be videos, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think I speak for everyone when I say we're so happy to see you doing better, and also when you feel comfortable, we're all so excited to see stuff from you again.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate everybody's support, your support. It means the world.
Of course, of course. Well, guys, hopefully this video helped you to just take out that phone, start shooting, and maybe if you don't even have the iPhone 15 or the iPhone 16 Pro, you might have a camera lying around that you haven't picked up in maybe 5 years, but it still has log. So go play with it. Have fun. Learn some of these different exposure tools. It was fun for me to even learn more about this for this video. So until next time, everyone, let me know if you like this video. Hit that subscribe button down below for new videos every single week. I gotta change that outro because it's not every single week, but thanks for watching. Okay, bye. Stay peachy.